and we want to see how do we meet these challenges of working from home? How do we measure? How do we monitor performance of guys? How are we being monitored when it comes to the kind of work that we are doing? So I believe this should set a stage for a very, very interactive session. And I'm looking forward to that interactive session starting this minute. So before we start, normally I'll take the expectations. So I'll expect those ones who can unmute your mics, then share with us what is the expectations of this training. I'll be glad to do that so that we know from as we start, we understand exactly what is it that we would wish to gain at the end of the training. And remember, there are some expectations that we will mention today. We may not achieve them today, but subsequently in the next module, we may, of course, be able to meet those expectations. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like now to invite each one of us to share your expectations. I'll just take the first 10 expectations. So that means if you take that chance immediately, you can share with us your expectations, then the other people will assume that those 10 will represent the rest. But you can always chat, use the chat section to also just share with us what your expectation is for this type of, for this training today and next Saturday. So let me start taking the expectations, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Caleb.
Yes, Caleb.
Yes, I'm excited this morning actually to be part of this team today.
Yes, Caleb, go on. Caleb, we lost you.
Caleb?
Yes, we lost you.
Yes, but I think I can be heard clearly.
Yes, yes.
Yes, actually, as we speak this morning, actually we are in the process of the appraisals.
Yes.
And at this juncture, I'm very sure I'm going to gain so much so that it can also get me in the process of the appraisal.
Absolutely.
Which is a very key process in terms of the HR department also, just to get the quality and the areas for the trainings. So my expectation for this session is very key to me and personally to me, and also to the entire organization, since it's gonna give me the platform and the guidelines on how to carry out the whole process of the appraisals. And also secondly, it is also we are ISO certified, which is also an area of concern when it comes to also the ISO audit. As the HR people, how do you carry out your appraisals and all? What was the process? How was the process? After the process, what is the next stage of maybe training and all that? So I'm going to gain so much gems on this, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Caleb. Thank you, Caleb. I think that's timely for you. Thank you. Next, I know there are some chats from Grace. Expect to learn more about appraisals in order to effectively conduct the same in an organization. Thank you, Grace. Agnes, the same. How to manage performance. Thank you. Anybody else who can share with us, you can unmute your mic and also use the chat section. Okay, then, yes.
Now, just a point of order. I would urge all participants to use their names. If one is not using their name, they are using some digits, I will return them to attendees. Yeah, for purposes of knowing who is present and who is not there. Like 496900, use your correct name. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan, for that clarification. I think, yeah, it's important for us to know who we are talking to, and also to just be alive to the aspect of knowing who it is, who is this professional that is represented by digits. Then we have Martha, learn about appraisals, how to arrive at scoring and weighting, and what informs the basis of scoring. Thank you. Ashiro, I think also you have, you're giving us your expectation. Okay, so it's open for those who are chatting and also those who can share with us verbally. You can see Momo's Leonard, understand the process of appraisal stages, right? Ali Haji. You have something to share, Ali Haji? All right, Patrick says, value addition of appraisals to organizations, thank you. Ashiro, how to get best performance appraisal as well as appraisal rating factors. Fantastic, fantastic. How to understand the appraisal process, the scoring and all that, thank you. Mary Kaguma, understand the whole process of appraisal and be able to implement the same in my organization. Thank you, Mary. Who else, ladies and gentlemen? Janet, PAP process, especially during this pandemic period, how to conduct probation and performance appraisal for staff who are unfortunately at home following the pandemic. Very, very important, very important. Thank you, Janet. Lady Carol.
Rafimbi.
Yes, Rafimbi.
Mine is my expectation. It highly depends on how can you spice the officers to appreciate appraisal within the organization, because they find it as if we are pushing them to the extreme, and the appraisee feels that it's not delivering because you see, as you need to give the returns. So how do we spice the officers, the both processes to be enticing to the organization?
Absolutely. In fact, that's always a daunting task for officers to actually look at an appraisal process as a motivating process and not as an intimidating process or a process that's just being done for formality. Thank you, Rafimbi. There is Lady Caroline who says, I wish to be enlightened on result-based targets appraisals. Then we have Rose says, Rose Ogata, I wish to understand how to appraise staff who do routine jobs like secretaries and office assistants. Thank you. Rosalind says to understand more about performance appraisal stages all through from the purpose, steps, methods, and also errors during the appraisal process. Thank you very much, Rosalind. There was one from, okay, Pat, how BSc can be used in an institution of higher learning, university setup, Patricia. Thank you. Thank you, Patricia. There was one from, okay, I think that one has no name. It's actually showing some digits. Patrick says, value addition to appraisal organization. I think that has been said. Who else? Susan says, understand appraisal process and ensuring the whole organization embraces performance management. Thank you, Susan. Rose, Ramos, who else? That's pretty fine. I think I'm assuming whatever has been brought out from the other professionals can be echoed by the rest, how to overcome cultural biases in appraisals. In fact, biases is just usually another tall order with regard to how do we make people appreciate that this appraisal is not meant to witch hunt anybody, that this appraisal is basically going to enhance your improvement, but it also boils down to we as the line managers, the managers, how do we communicate, how do we initiate the process so that, and also the indicators that we'll have, the parameters, how clear are the parameters? So that from the word go, I'm able to visualize it, to understand, to integrate within myself and appreciate that whatever parameters are being used are things that are alive to my mind. I understand them and I'll be able to work towards that. So thank you very much. I think that's what is echoed by Alice Mayaka. Alhaji, to understand the appraisal methods. Thank you, Alhaji. So you can keep sharing. I know there are people who are logged in just now. Keep sharing your expectations as we constantly review them and establish where we are with regards to where we are headed to. Good. So ladies and gentlemen, allow me now to start our training today. And as I've mentioned, I'll be posing in questions here and there. And you're also at liberty to raise any questions, any clarifications, share any expectation from your end and what you feel the professionals here can engage deeper. I know there are some incidences where I've seen even some in our groups where people are trying to interact on how do we go about a particular situation. So let's also use this platform to engage further. And definitely we'll be able to come up better people than we were before. Claire Wangui says to understand the appraisal process deeper. Thank you. All right. So let's start today's training. And as introduced by the head of this SCHRP, we'll be looking at this performance appraisal training in two sessions. That's the first session today, and the following session that will be next week on Saturday. And the division or the way it has been divided, and I think I just mentioned, today is more of the introduction. We'll be looking at the purpose of the appraisals. We'll also be looking at setting goals or defining goals and the efforts that we ought to channel into these appraisals. Then we'll also share more about the performance criteria. How do we set the performance criteria? Then we'll also, I'll shed more light on the process of performance appraisal during that process so that we take a critical look at each of the specific stages and what does each of those stages impact, or what does it, or maybe what does it imply with regard to the appraiser and the appraisee. Then the other question would be, who does the appraising? Who are these people that engage in this appraising, or who does the appraising, apart from the formal way in which we do the appraisal? So who are these people? Who are these professionals? Who are these officers that have that in that capacity to engage in the appraisal process? Then as we conclude today, we'll be looking at the various methods of appraisal. And when we look at those methods, we'll look at a number of methods. Then subsequently, in the next session also we'll proceed, or we'll progress, we'll take up from where we've stopped, because those methods are quite a number. And what matters is the applicability. You know, just like every one of us have very brilliant dreams. We have so much, anytime, in fact, when you share with people your aspirations and your dreams, we'll be looking at you and marveling and saying, wow, I wish we implement that. So it's also the same with appraisals, where we have well-documented processes, well-documented parameters, but then the question is, how well do we implement that? Implementation is usually another daunting task with human beings. We have so many things, we have so many aspirations, but then the question is, how do we implement? How do we implement them effectively? Owing to the fact that also we have some other controls or external forces and internal forces that can affect our implementation process. But then how do we navigate those challenges to ensure that we stay on course? As Senat says, how to initiate performance appraisal process, implement the same to employees who have never been appraised. Thank you, Asenath. Okay, so those are the key pointers that I'll be looking at today. And as I start off, I want to start by the quote from Peter Drucker. I know Peter Drucker is not a very unfamiliar name with us professionals. Him being a management guru, and more so, he's more focused on performance management. So Peter Drucker said that you can't manage what you cannot measure. That's one thing that we must always think about. Anytime we talk about managing performance, then are we able to measure it? Because if we don't measure, then how do we manage performance? And that's some of the questions, the problems that we face. And I think that's also what we are facing mostly today. From the expectations, I can see an element whereby we have a challenge with measuring. So once we have a challenge with measuring, where the parameters are not clear, parameters are not understood, the parameters are not agreed upon, then it's actually an ingredient for conflict that arise out of people feeling that this appraisal process is not an objective one, because from the aspect of measuring, then we got it wrong. So that's basically what I want us to look at, starting from what Peter Drucker told us, that we cannot manage what you can't measure. And ladies and gentlemen, remember, performance management and appraisal is just one of the tools under performance management. So if we have this tool, then are we engaging in performance management? Because performance management will then make, or it will qualify the performance appraisal. But we can't hold performance appraisal on its own. In fact, in most cases where appraisals have been handled on their own as an event, that's where there is always these problems that arise, and they affect the manner in which people interact, and also face the challenges of sharing with other people. Good, so allow me to share my screen as I shed more on these objectives and just generally what is ahead of us today. Okay, so I hope you can confirm that you're able to see my screen. Anyone to confirm that?
Great, we can see the screen.
Ah, great, great.
Yes, it's clear.
Thank you. Wow, I've seen Mary Kagumu. Mary Kagumu, I was just looking at your screensaver. Your screensaver says, while working with pride on earth. Remember today, while working on earth, while working with pride on earth, remember, today the soil is under you, tomorrow the soil is over you.
Yes.
That's very inspiring, yeah? It calls for a lot of interrogation. Think about what you do and what do you expect to gain from that. Thank you. So our training has the following objectives. Now, these objectives will actually cover both today and next week. But in summary, as I've already mentioned, we are looking at, we'll look up to that point on the methods of performance appraisal. Then subsequently, we'll be looking at why do appraisals fail? How do we deal with biases like what somebody mentioned, the errors in appraisals? And generally, how do we make appraisal to be the most effective tool for performance management? So as an introduction, I would just want to bring to attention this case study. It's just a scenario. This is a scenario by Chris and Michael. And they're having a conversation. For example, there's, if you look at it, we say, hi, Chris, what happened? Why are you so tense? Then Michael replies, Chris says, Michael, I'm hoping to get promotion to the senior manager position that has opened up in my department. Now, these are the conversations that we normally have even at our areas of work. So these conversations that we have is just mirroring what we actually face. Of course, you will. Why not? Who knows? Maybe they'll choose another person instead. Now you can see what Chris is trying to say, that they're likely to choose maybe Tom. Okay, so he's not very sure whether it's him or it will be Tom that will get this position. Then why him of all the people? Now this is how we also deal with the same problem, where we start asking, why not you? Why will the other person actually get that promotion and not you? Then you can see what Chris is saying, that is just that he's good at impressing people. He's forever being sweet and nice and doing sweet talking. So when Chris is saying this kind of comments, that he's nice to people and doing sweet talking, then you can always figure out that maybe according to Chris, the appraiser is likely to be influenced more by the extroverted character of a person. Yes, that's true, but he does not have anything to show as far as work goes. You are the best. Now you can hear what Michael is saying. Michael is looking at Chris in terms of what Tom does and what Chris does. It is just a debate that they're trying to create this conversation. I hope they remember that he just talks. I just hope they see what I am the one who has brought them their best projects. Okay. Of course they will. Did you forget performance appraisals? That's now the question from Michael. Then Chris says, oh yes, I'm feeling a lot better hearing about that. So what is Michael talking about? Why is Chris feeling better hearing about performance appraisals? That's a question that we ought to ask ourselves, that from that conversation, then you can see that Michael is talking about this process that will appreciate, it will acknowledge, will recognize his effort. Though initially Chris was a bit hesitant to understand that this process will actually bring the best out of him, will actually reveal what contribution he's done in his position as well as the organization at large with regards to delivering to projects. So this is a conversation, this is a question that I want us to have in our mind as we engage in this conversation, ladies and gentlemen. So based on that, then, from that, then we expect that Chris will understand more, or Michael and Chris will also be able to understand more on how the performance appraisal will help Chris to manage and record and just be clear on what indicators, what measures they need to put in place as employees, so that when the decision of choosing a manager is taken, they'll actually purpose to focus on the key indicators, so that when you're promoting somebody, then who do you what do you focus on when you're doing the appraisals? And that mirrors what will be the purpose of appraisals. Why do we carry out appraisals? And that will be handled in the subsequent slide. So Chris feels better that during these appraisals, he will be able to clearly outshine Tom, as Chris is definitely better performer than Tom. So this conversation is evoking that mindset of now Chris saying, if this process is being done, and according to him, then his mind is clear that the appraisal will actually bring about understanding what is it that they have set to achieve. And it's not just about the impression, it's not just about sweet talking to people, it's not just about appearing to be nice, but it all boils down to what is it that that we are contributing towards the organization. Hence the definition of what an appraisal is. And I've brought about, or I just identified this definition, which is the process by which an employee's contribution to the organization during a specified period of time is assessed. So that contribution could be daily, hourly, monthly, weekly, or yearly, but we are looking at that contribution that you're making in a specified period of time to the organization. However, the debate has always been, how do we measure some of those innate and also some of those things that are overt and covert. How do we measure those aspects? But that will require a lot of innovation and creativity to ensure that we capture some of the those qualifiable and not quantifiable aspects of performance, so that they inform our definition and our expectations with regard to performance. So when we talk about appraisal, then if you look at the contribution, that means within that period of time, there has to be feedback. This is the feedback that will ensure that me as a staff, me as an employee, I understand whether I'm working towards meeting my expectations, my targets. Am I on the right track? Am I facing any challenges? And what are some of the remedial actions are we taking both at an individual level and also at the organizational level to ensure that I do not drift away from that trajectory with regard to my performance targets? So that's essentially what we ought to focus on and also understand on how well we need to frame this and also understand the contribution. I know Caleb was saying that they are carrying out the appraisals this period. And I know when you're carrying out appraisals, usually the appraisal season is one of the most tricky, the most challenging process or period, whereby everyone will be trying to outshine each other. Everyone will be trying to create an impression. But then the question that we normally need to pose to our supervisors, our line managers, is do not be deceived by the final or the last minute impressions. And that's what we'll be discussing on what makes appraisals to fail in our subsequent conversation. What are these factors that will make our appraisal not to achieve its intended purpose? Because we get hoodwinked by the nice person, the good person that drastically, just decide that I become a nice person in the final month of towards appraisal. But you as a line manager, are you able to identify that I'm just being nice because I want to be appraised? You've seen people who need, when we recruit people and we want to confirm them, these guys will become, they'll be so good. They'll be so appreciative. They'll be going extra miles to impress you. But are you able to determine that actually this is just a time period whereby after this confirmation of this person in this position, then maybe the right picture comes out. And that has been experienced not once, not twice, but so many times with the people that, for example, the ones that I've worked with, whereby at that period where somebody is undergoing the probation, they'll do anything. Just the same way they presented themselves during the interview, that they are the best people that this organization has been looking for. They are the best people that will always work extra hours. They are these people that are willing to be more innovative for the benefit of the organization. But wait until they get confirmed and you can see that whatever was being preached is consequently the opposite of what happened. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's a discussion that we'll keep on having to just get to the picture that we need to be very, very cautious, especially with regard to effecting this appraisal. So definitions that we can have that also range from what I've talked about, just to break it into stages, is that we are looking at appraising an employee, the current, and what? The past performance with regard to the standards. So today when you wake up, you have a daily target and say that today I'll attend this training. After that, I'll go and do this task 1, 2, 3, and 4. So at the end of the day, you need to look back and say, how much have I achieved today? That's just to resonate with what appraisals are, that we are looking at what is it that we set forth to achieve and what is it that we've achieved. If we've not achieved, then what is the next decision? What is the way forward to our inability to achieve that? And who can we attribute to our inability to achieve the same? So according to Newstrom, it is the process of evaluating the performance of employees, sharing that information with them, and searching ways to improve their performance. Okay, now, when you are looking at improving somebody's performance, how do you make James to understand that he will do better? Or how do you make Nancy, how do you make Anne, for example, to understand that they can do better? It now calls for coaching, so that we must now acknowledge the fact that there has to be a paradigm shift between how appraisals have been held before and in line with the current changes, the current dynamics in the world of work. How do we become coaches? So that by coaching me, then you make me realize the potential that I have. You make me to realize that I can do it. You make me to realize that I have a limitation which I can circumvent. I have sometimes you may find that people have the competencies, but they are not able to unleash them. So what sort of environment can we create so that these people are able to unleash their potential? And that requires coaching to be in place. Another definition here is that it is the step where the management finds out how effective it's been at hiring and placing employees. These are just the key or some of the areas where the appraisals actually looks at. So from the time of hiring to the time of placing, then did we get the right fit? Because when you do the appraisal, that's when you realize that you hired the wrong person. I know in my organization, there's a time we had someone, I think 2 years ago. And when we did the interviews, this person displayed the most creative, the most intelligent person. And unto us, we realized that we were hoodwinked. Because later on, even we were not able to confirm this person. And in fact, he came in at a managerial level, but we are not able to confirm him because whatever he presented, there's a day even we asked ourselves, how dare we get hoodwinked in this kind of activity? But we realized that from the time we set our expectations of who we are looking for, we were not clear on some of the things. We were a bit vague, and that is what caused us to hire somebody that did not fit in our organization. He was not able to fit in that position. He was not able to fit. He didn't have a lot of competency levels that we thought he had after he presented that. So, and that's also where there's a mismatch between what people say and also what qualification they have compared to what actually is or what happens when they are subjected to the real work situation. Hence, it is recommended that in addition to our annual performance appraisals, informal performance appraisals should be conducted 2 or 3 times a year. Now, that point, you cannot underrate it, because the moment or where we bring ourselves into challenges is when we do appraisals once in a year or twice in a year. And we forget that performance should be a continuous process. Once you have that in mind, continuous process means that everything that we do today has an implication on tomorrow. So if there's an error that is being done today, it's my responsibility, this is your responsibility to ensure that we make corrective action at that particular time, so that we don't wait until November, or we don't wait until June. That's when you remind Caleb, or you remind Ali that Ali, there's this critical incident where you did not act in good faith, or there's this time where you did not support your colleague, and therefore it's not right, and therefore I'm not going to appraise you on this element. I'm not going to appraise you because this is something that you did in January, and I did not approach you at that moment. So it means that I'm raising an issue in November, yet I did not talk to you about it so that you improve on it. So that means subsequently I will have erred in the same. I will have done the same mistakes subsequently without having been corrected. So that's where I'm saying we need to ensure that our appraisals are held as frequently as possible to ensure that we continuously monitor and make people to understand exactly what lies ahead. Now, there was maybe this is just another case I would like to share with you. In one of our forums, in one of our WhatsApp groups, there's a debate. Somebody had posted something 2 days ago, and he was asking that in company In this company, we have there was a position of the finance manager that had fallen vacant. The position of the finance manager. Then we have three people working in that department. 2 people are at the same level. So we have Mary and Jen, who are accountants. Then we have John, who is a senior accountant. So the position of the finance manager has fallen vacant or fell vacant in this organization. So of course, John applied for the position. Then again, Mary applied for the same position. So they all, I think they met the minimum requirements, but remember, Mary and Jen fall in the same category. Their work or their grade is the same, so they're working in the same department with the same roles. But Mary has a bit of experience, and also, okay, Mary has some qualifications that made her to apply for this position of the finance manager. So after the interviews, John becomes successful and he actually gets the position of the finance manager. So if that position now, with the position of the finance manager, then there is need to replace which position? The senior accountant position. Now, owing to the circumstances whereby you've seen Mary applied for that position and therefore Mary was number 2 in the interviews, then we have Jen, who did not apply for the finance manager position. And now we have the senior accountant position that has fallen vacant. So Mary and Jen again applies for the senior accountant position that has fallen vacant. Both of them apply again for that position. But on the panel, you find that from the results, after they do the interviews, Jen is the one who gets the position and not Mary. What can you attribute that to? Do you think that process was fair? Do you think, in your minds, from where you sit, do you think Jen decided to be the senior accountant, or it was Mary who decided to be a senior accountant? And what reasons can you attribute to all these these issues that have arisen in between, and why Mary lost out on the senior position job? Anybody to take us on that? Did you get my case study clearly? Or I take it once again?
James?
Yes.
This Caleb. On my case, I think when you're looking at the potential of a person,
yes,
you're not only looking at how the work is being done. You're also looking at the contribution that this individual is going to give to the organization.
Yes.
That individual growth, that passion that an individual has, can actually drive that department or that organization to another level.
Yes.
And if you check now in your case study, now, you find like maybe Jen had reached to a certain level where he couldn't grow further, where he could come up with more ideas to that particular department. So that's why maybe if you find now Jen coming up to that position, is
yes,
that he had that he still had that for growth and could contribute more to the organization compared to her. That's my thought.
Thank you, Caleb. So you're looking at the contribution that Jen would offer in that position as a senior accountant, and could be that's the reason why she, according to her, she was looking at the progression, and she felt that maybe she's not able to automatically apply for a senior manager's position. No, not a senior manager, sorry, for a finance manager position, but she will feel that she needs to progressively move to the next level. Then after that is when she will move to the finance manager position. So thank you for that observation. Anybody else with a different or a similar opinion on the same?
Can I suggest something?
Yeah. Yes, please.
It was Jenny and who?
Jenny and Mary.
Mary is the one who had done the interview with John.
Yes.
And because she felt she was good enough to have that top position, she did get it. So maybe when she went to the interview for the lower level, which was still above the job where she was working, maybe she was so confident that she's very good and even better above that level. Maybe preparation for the interview or the attitude she exhibited. I'm just thinking that could be also a problem. When you assume you already have it and you know it, and attitude of and preparation for the interview where you think you already have it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So we are looking at Mary, who, because of from your statement, then it's like Mary maybe was overconfident, or Mary felt that this is a position that it's actually that she needs to get it automatically without having to show or to justify that she can contribute towards that. Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else? What do you think about that circumstance, that situation? Right. So thank you for the two contributions on that. What I can also add, okay, there is, let me see. Right. So then we need to be alive to the fact that these are situations that happen, and we deal with these situations every day. And it's also related to the appraisal, depending on how the capability of Jen has been. In view of now the next position, that's where we can attribute to her being promoted to the senior accountant position. Unlike Mary, who did not get that position, despite the fact that they're working the same level, and Mary had already shown aspiration to be at the top, or to be the finance manager. And in this question now, the challenge will be, how do you make sure that now Mary is able to look at Jen as the supervisor? How do you make sure that Jen, or how do you create a situation whereby now Jen is able now to take Mary as a subordinate? Because now with that position, that means now Jen becomes the subordinate. And like before, if Mary will have gotten the finance position, the finance manager position, Jen will have been the subordinate at that particular level. So these are the things that we face on in various positions at the organizational level, and we ought to be clear about them. Good. So the process now, I want us to look. So the purpose. I want us to look at the purpose of this appraisal process, or the purpose of the performance appraisal. Now, to the employee, appraisals act as a point of direction. Why do I say that? It's because if I'm having my targets for the year, then I'm able to see what are these quarterly targets that I need to achieve. And from these targets, then what sort of action do I need to put in place? So it gives me direction on where I'm headed to. Now that direction resonates with your career progression, and as well as also the promotional level. So, and also the training needs that you expect to build within that period of time. So as we look at that, then let's look at it as providing the direction within which one is looking forward to. Then the appraisal should also provide feedback about the performance. And this one I've talked about it. Now, this feedback, let's always look at it from both formal and informal. There are cases whereby we just need to discuss openly, informally about somebody's performance. And that way, then they will take corrective action without necessarily having to document it, or also having to have a very strict kind of meeting to actually confirm that that meeting was held. It also provides input for improvement. Remember, when you appraise me, whenever we appraise other people, then the purpose of this appraisal is to ensure that people know what are their strengths, what are the areas of improvement, and how do they go about improving in those areas. Another purpose is to offer motivation, of course. You get motivated. You appraise me, I know I'm going to have my salary reviewed, I'm going to actually grow my training and development needs, where now I'm having the capacity to develop into a team leader, for instance. Now that motivates me. That motivates me because I'll be looking forward to growth with regard to leadership position, or with regard to the departmental, or from where I was. Maybe when I joined, I had a lot of challenges with regard to task completion. I had challenges with mastering the process. I had challenges with just generally task or the behavior that I was exhibiting. But after the appraisal, I'm able now to see that I'm progressing from a particular deficiency to a particular competency level. That will motivate staff. It also clarifies task perception of the employee, because I'm alive to it. I know what is it that is expected, what will be the parameters, when will this be done, and all that. So that clarifies my understanding of what this task entails. It also identifies the strengths and weaknesses. I think I've already mentioned that. I cannot belabor more on that. It provides coaching, counseling, career planning to subordinates. That's it actually borrows heavily from what I've talked about with regard to feedback, input, and all that. Then it helps to achieve work satisfaction and personal development. Now, you feel satisfied when people acknowledge your contribution. You feel satisfied when you do it and you say, yes, I've done it, okay? You feel satisfaction if every time you wake up, you do things and you impact on people. If you are dealing with people, if you are dealing with clients, customers, then you find that whenever they appreciate your work, you also get satisfied. Whenever they complain about a problem and you deal with it, that gives you that satisfaction. Whenever your line manager appreciates the contribution you've made, that gives you satisfaction. Whenever a colleague appreciates the effort you've done in assisting them, that is also, it gives you satisfaction. Then when you talk about development, then that's when you realize that you're anchoring yourself in that career. Are you anchored in that career? So that anchorage comes also with regard to when the appraisals are done, do they pinpoint on that aspect of personal development? Am I growing? Have I improved in my communication, both verbally or non-verbal? Have I improved in my reporting? Have I improved in the quality of the work that I do? So all that is what will give me, will give the employee that satisfaction. On the flip side, now the organization will look at an appraisal as a process that enhances documentation for performance, because now through that we are able now to document each of the individual's performance. This documentation is mirrored now on the whole organization. So when we mirror that documentation, then we are able to tell ourselves that our organization has either improved, it has stagnated, or it has declined in its own performance generally. Then it also offers legal protection. Legal protection in the sense that through documentation, through these processes that are clear, if there is any adverse decision that has to be taken, then it actually protects the organization from those legal suits or the litigations that will come along when we make some drastic decisions that affect employees, and employees have a basis, or they can have a case to build with regard to taking a legal redress. It also creates a motivation system to the organization, so that the organization can be looking at what are these motivational aspects that we can attribute or we can channel to performance of people. If you are looking at the team, if you are looking at the department, how do we appreciate the department whenever it has made or it has achieved the great milestones with regard to their to the organizational performance? So how do we have that kind of motivation? Then for decisions related to promotions, firing, layoffs, and merit pay increases, and I think that is the hallmark of it. The appraisal forms a strong basis of promotions, layoffs, and merit pay increases. That is if they are done right. But if you are just that organization that copy-pastes other people's performance appraisals, or you just adopt other people's appraisals, other organizations' appraisals, and try to fit in without making relevant alterations to suit your organization, then you'll end up getting it wrong when it comes to the promotions, firing, and layoffs. Then it also provides input for training and development. Of course, when we appraise people, we'll be looking at enhancing their competency levels in various ways, and that will always point at some of the training and development needs. It also clarifies management's expectations. What is it that the management expects from James from this position? So because of through the appraisals, then we are able to ascertain that the expectations of the organization has been that James should be good in customer, or to achieve this level of customer satisfaction. But then after the appraisal, we are able to see what level of customer satisfaction is James able to attain. Maybe it's 50%, 40%, 70%, and what actions need to be taken to avert that kind of performance. To take measures for improvement, I think this resonates also with what employees expect. It also focuses employees' efforts to achieve company strategic goals. That is very, very vital, because we're looking at the vision of the organization. So the vision of the organization has to be cascaded into the middle level, then we look at the functional level. So functional level is where we as staff appear at that level, but then how do we synchronize our efforts towards the achievement of the vision of the organization, or the strategic goals of the organization at this particular point in time? And this usually the people who drive that strategic goal will be the senior managers. We're looking at the chief executive officer. We are looking at, in fact, nowadays we don't call them chief executive officer. We call them as chief vision officers, because their role is to ensure that they drive that vision of the organization, not just executive. Because I think executive has always created that aspect of comfort. You know, we look at an executive and we feel it's comfort and all that, but ideally, because of the changes that we are expecting, then it's like we need this person who is always seeing what others cannot see, or she is always looking at what direction do we need to get, what is it that we need to achieve to ensure that we remain on course with our vision. So they see more than what the rest see, and they'll try now to mobilize to align these other people's vision into that main vision of the organization. That's why we call them as the chief vision officers, not just necessarily the chief executive, because executive tends to limit the kind of the enormous or the huge kind of responsibility that lies in the shoulders of these people. So then I want to bring to attention this diagram that shows the relationship between the appraisal and some of the other HR functions, or the key functions. So if you look at it, we have the performance appraisal in the middle, then we have recruitment, selection, training and development, compensation, and labor relations. So the appraisal, if the appraisal is gotten wrong, then all these we can attribute that having it wrong to any of these or all these aspects. Because when you appraise wrongly, then you are likely also to get the wrong hire. You are likely to actually have the wrong training and development needs. You are going definitely to compensate to the wrong people. You are definitely going to bring about conflict. There'll be a lot of resentment. There'll be a lot of people feeling that there's a lot of biasness. People will be feeling that they are not being appreciated. Their contribution is devalued. They're not being acknowledged and all that. So the appraisal is at the core of the HR functions. So if you streamline the appraisal process, then it all boils at having the best people that have been recruited. Because even your job description of the person that you're looking at, the person specification of the person you're looking at will be there, will actually go ahead and get the right person who will fit now in the appraisal, owing to how you'll have documented these processes. The next aspect, or the next objective, is defining goals and work efforts. That's after looking at the appraisal purpose and all that. So we need to define the goals and the efforts as our second point of discussion today. So after looking at the purpose to both employee and the organization, then for us to appraise effectively or to run the appraisal process very well, is that we need to understand that people have a strategic goal. The same way I've talked about the strategic vision or the vision of the organization, how do we ensure that everybody else here, the contribution of the organization or the people, tends towards that top level achievement? There is in strategy we talk about, or in strategic HR, we talk about vertical and horizontal integration. And I would like to take a minute or so to just describe more about that vertical and horizontal integration. Now, the vertical integration takes a triangle format. I believe you know what a triangle is. So the triangle format, at the top level, we are looking at the vision of the organization. That means we are looking at what is it that we purpose to achieve? Where do we want to be? What direction do we want to take as an organization? So if you want to be the best organization in terms of innovation, a very innovative organization, then we'll look at what are the innovative measures have we put in place at the different departments. What innovations are we coming up with so that we are able to fulfill the requirement of our vision, which is to be the most innovative company in Africa or in Kenya. So if you are looking at it in Kenya, for instance, then we have to see, are you a leader? Have you been regarded as a market leader in that kind of industry because of the innovativeness or because of your growth, your expansions? Can we attribute that to the kind of innovations that you've come up with? If you're not coming up with any innovations, then you're already negating your vision. You are not actually working toward that vision. And that's where we talk about misalignment or lack of integration between the vision of the organization and what people need to put down there. So it's similar to where our direction, we are going north, then we have people that are going south, others east, others west. That automatically means that we are not singing the same song. But for us to achieve the strategic goal, then we must always sing the same song. So that song, it could be that my intonation will be the same, will not be the same, but I'm actually focusing on the same song ultimately. So we need to be very clear on the strategic goal of the company or the organization or the enterprise that we are working with. Then it's also very crucial that the company defines defined goals and efforts that each employee should contribute. Then each employee should clearly know his goals and efforts. They should know which direction they need to take. And it's also essential that goals and work effort defined should be specific, measurable, challenging, practically feasible, and encourages participation. So you cannot talk about goals and efforts. If you expect me to jointly put in the effort, then I must know who am I working with. I must know what direction are we going towards. So all those facets are very, very significant to enable people to know where they are heading to. So when we are defining these goals, then we must look at, they must be SMART, just the same way we talk about our objectives, because whenever we link goals to the efforts, then we are looking at my effort. What is it that it's in the short term that I want to achieve? What is it in the medium term that I want to achieve? What is it in the long term that I want to achieve? And that's why we have this acronym of SMART. Specific, we need to know what are these results, what are these expectations, what are these tasks that I need to put in place within my scope of work. Then measurable, how much, to what extent should I achieve that? What is it I must achieve? Attainable and not too tough or too easy. So I'm not putting a lot of weight on you on things that, or on tasks that are unachievable. Neither am I giving you jobs, or am I giving you tasks that I don't have, or you don't have the necessary arsenal to do that. You don't have the necessary support to do that. You don't have the necessary tools to do that. Relevant to what is to be achieved. So it has to be relevant, because once it's clear, then we have to look at how relevant, how realistic it is when it comes to achievement. You don't expect me to wake up today and come up with 10 projects of innovation, yet maybe just one project takes 6 months. So if you are giving me a target of 10 projects within a year, that of course is definitely unachievable, and therefore it will not be relevant. So we must always look at the scope of expectations that are within reach. That's like the cliche where we say aim at A and get a B. But you cannot aim at a, if you are an E student, you've been an E student, probability of you rising up to the A student is very low. But if you are an E student and you want to move to C, C is a bit achievable. But now you look at E, D, then C, C becomes an average level, which you can say that with your efforts, and considering that other factors will remain constant, you can easily navigate to the C class. But jumping from E, unless there are other factors that made you to be at E, to automatically come to A, you'll find that it only applies to those outliers, people who belong to that category of the outliers in society. If you read the book by Malcolm Gladwell, it talks about the outliers, or the people that are outliers in society, and it mirrors the society as it is, where we have these people who fall in that category, the extreme outlier on this other end, and the extreme outlier on the other end. And you find that all these extremes have their own characteristics, but all these two groups, they have to exist in a similar environment. But we have these extremes, the same way we talk about the haves and the have-nots. The kind of environment that you are subjected to, does it shape how you will perceive your career? Where you are born, the kind of socialization that you went to, does it dictate, does it shape how you perceive things? How does it shape how you perceive life? Does it even also have an impact on how you relate with people? Okay. At times, and this is something you may need to carry out your research on, even at workplace. At times, we find people that appear to be so aggressive in organizations. Some of them appear to be very radical. They appear to be very maybe can we attribute this to the socialization? Can we attribute this to the background they came from? Because if they were shaped that way, then you cannot change them at that point. You just need now to see how well can you get the best out of them. Otherwise, that person will be complaining about having these difficult people, but not knowing that you need to apply your emotional intelligence to understand that these diversities are there. And the better we realize that they are there, the best way we can come up with ways of managing them. So this brings me to this question. Now, I'm posing it to you people. Is your HR management cycle, or does it have accurate and current job description for all your employees? Do you have employees? Do your employees have the resources, training, and information they need? Are you aware of problems that your employees have right now for which they need help? Are you giving regular informal feedback? If you can answer all these 4 questions, then it will be giving you a good foundation on how to deal with appraisal issues quite well. So you need to ask yourself now, currently, do you have the right or do you have the accurate and current job descriptions at your organization? If not, then you need to do that. Do your employees have the right resources, training, and information they need? Because you may be talking about the appraisal, like Caleb could be talking about the appraisal, but maybe the appraisal that they have today, jobs have changed, people have been working from home. Did you in any way now rectify the reporting line? Did you in any way also rectify the manner in which the reporting should be done? So that if you're doing the appraisal today, you are not appraising it in the past. You're just not using the past approach, but you're looking at the most agile approach today. We are looking at the agility of the organization, because we need to ensure that our performance appraisal is as agile as possible. Let it be adaptive, let it be very responsive, and let it be calibrated to the new workplace. That's the question that we ought to be alive to. So ensure that your people have the right resources, the information they need. Because you'll not expect somebody to perform optimally if they don't have the right information. If the information they're getting is scanty, then of course you expect scanty performance. Are you aware of the problems that your employees have right now for which they need help? When people work from home, have you had the time to have a discussion with them on how they're able to access internet, on how they're able to even the environment they're writing in? If they are to write reports, what sort of environment are they writing in? I remember there's one time we were having our virtual meetings, and one of the employees was trying to connect himself on the link. Only to realize that he was actually standing in a very dingy place, and that's the only place that the internet is a bit stable. So as he was trying to do that, then the video came on, and we could see, and then after that, I think he realized that the video was on. Then he very fast disabled the video, but now we could hear the voice clearly. But then that's just one thing that made me to think, then are people working from the right environment? Sometimes you have a meeting and you hear people in the background. It's like, you know, we don't stay alone. We have families, we have friends and all that. So the challenge will be, how is this person able to work effectively from where they are? Do the gadgets that they have, are they able to actually give them the correct information? Are they operating in the right environment? But that's a debate that varies depending on also the kind of people. There are people that work very well from home. Others will find it a bit challenging to work from home, but they have to adapt. We have to look at how adaptable can we get to ensure that we do not jeopardize the work. We don't also affect the manner in which we need to report our information. So are you also giving regular information or regular feedback to the team? So those are the questions that I would like you to ponder on, ladies and gentlemen. Unless if there is any question, any suggestion, any comment at that point, I welcome any of the comments, any suggestion before I proceed. All right. So if there is no question, maybe we can take a short break at that moment. We can take a short break, just a 10 minutes break, then we actually log in again in the next, in fact, you don't have to log off. We just continue again at 10, like right now it's at 10 or 2 a.m. Can we resume at 10:12, just after 10 minutes? Is that agreeable?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you. So
Yes, please.
yes. So you can stretch yourself. I know sitting for more than 2 hours is also not healthy. So you can stretch yourself a little bit, and let's touch base again at 12 minutes past 10. Okay, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I think we can proceed. We can proceed from where we stopped. And I just want to confirm that we are there. Kindly confirm that you are there.
Yes, I am.
Ah, good.
Yes,
Good.
we are here.
Yes, we are here.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. Good to hear that you're there. So allow me to move to the next slide. That is on performance criteria. And before that, I think there was just to respond to, I think I was explaining something to do with vertical and horizontal integration. And sorry, I didn't talk about the horizontal one, but I've seen, I think it's Patrick or somebody who has reminded me about that. That's just from the chat section. Yes, it was Patrick. Well, so I think then the vertical integration is clear. Where I said it's more of a triangle, then we are looking at the top level aspiration, that's the vision where we would like to get. Then we have the horizontal. Now, horizontal means that the different departments or the different functions, like let's say HR functions, that the HR functions must be interdependent. Interdependent in the sense that one process or one activity leads to the other. And maybe I can give you a very simple example. When you do recruitment, from the time you are recruiting, from the recruitment process, of course, you have those the specifications that you want, the kind of person you're looking for, all that. So once you have that person, then you automatically determine what sort of training will they need. So meaning from the recruitment process, it automatically, like the same way we do, after we recruit, we do the induction. So the induction training must meet the needs of whatever you realize has the gaps in this person. Let us not just do also the induction with regards to the normal way it's done, but let's know that if we are bringing this person, maybe this person, we need to get the person that meets all the requirements. They might need some cultural fit. They might need some competency adjustments, and generally just to fit into the culture. Then the induction training comes in handy because it's meant now to ensure that this person settles in quite effectively. It becomes seamless for them to settle into this position and this organization without major challenges. So that's where now the training comes in. So we are looking at that integration from one function to another. So recruitment selection leads into what? Training and development. Training and development, the more we train people, we are training them because we want to measure the outcome of the training. So that when I train you, I want to see how will I measure the outcome of this training? What will I look for? Are we going to experience behavioral change? Are we going to experience task improvement? Are we going to experience your competency growth and all that? So whenever we have that in line with our process, then we are trying to see how one function leads to the other. So you can look at horizontal integration from that perspective, whereby we are looking at, as a department, then how do each function reinforce each other function? And once we also get the horizontal integration right, it ultimately have a ripple effect now on the vertical integration. Because once we are doing well at the departmental level, that means our procedures are done within the specified guidelines. We are doing our activities within the timelines. Our behavior is also resonating with what we've set forth. Then ultimately that will have an overall impact on the vision of that organization, which is a point that I had not mentioned before. But that's basically what horizontal and vertical is. But from a broader perspective, then horizontal integration is where one department, whatever each department is doing, reinforces the other department. Look at marketing, look at production, look at procurement, look at HR, look at IT. So the more these departments work in harmony, the more we achieve horizontal integration. But the more they work in isolation, the more disintegration it gets, and the more disintegrated the vision of the organization gets. So that's essentially what horizontal means. I hope I've answered you, Patrick.
Yeah, you've done it well. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Fine. So we were to look at the criteria or the performance criteria. And by criteria, remember, when you talk about criteria, then we are looking at what is this measure, or what is the level of measurement are we looking at? And that's where the aspect of criteria comes in. So in performance, we ought to ensure that our criteria is clear and people understand especially what is acceptable and what is unacceptable. That's essentially what criteria should actually focus on. So it will help ourselves, or it will help the organization or the department to translate job requirements into levels of acceptable or unacceptable employee behavior. And remember, it's very, very important that we define performance criteria in conducting the performance appraisal. Let people know exactly from the starting point. By the time you are coming up with the yearly, or you're coming up with these targets, the strategic objectives and the KPIs, then the discussion that we normally say has to take place is for the employee or for the line manager and the staff to be on the same tangent. We want them to be on the same point of discussion, so that whenever now we are doing the performance management, then we already know what is it that we are doing, what is it that we expect to do. And that will limit those cases whereby at the end of the period when you are being appraised, that's when you start saying, no, this one, I don't think it's clear. This one was not clear, or this one, I don't think we are able to measure it, meaning that we failed at the onset. So we must always ensure that it is clear. The clarity has to be there so that we know what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. And that criteria has to be explained at the onset. Because if we don't get it, then our performance management will actually hit a nosedive. So this criteria is very critical because of the job analysis and performance linkage. So you'll be analyzing what are the key positions or the key responsibilities of this position. Then we actually mirror them to the KPIs. So the KPIs should actually resonate with this. Though at times, the challenge has been that people will ask, my job description is very elaborate, but when it comes to the KPIs are a bit less. How do we go about it? Now, the question, the approach to go about that is, with the job description has, some of them are mainly tasks. So you need to compress those tasks into meaningful, measurable indicators. So now these meaningful indicators are the ones that you can use or to actually reflect on the different job descriptions that this person has. And that way then you're able to compress in each of the indicator or in each of the parameter. We can say that in this parameter, this means you've done your task 1, 2, 3, 4 in the right way, meeting this kind of expectations. Then it's also important that the criteria is set based on the standards by which we compare good behavior, and also the predictors and what the organization is looking for in an individual while hiring, and the criteria and the evidence of the good of the employee. But there's always that gap between theoretical or the ideal criteria versus the actual criteria. So the onus is on us to ensure that we have what we call the ideal versus the actual. Now, ideal is what we've set. Actual is what we achieve. But also there's this other one we call theoretical. Now, theoretical is a very serious omission whereby we just assume that you need to achieve this. But when you go deeper to analyze what are these targets that we've set, we are not even able to relate them at all with the job of this person. So you end up finding that maybe the contribution of this person into that kind of criteria can actually be like 10% or 1%, but you've put it as a major indicator. Now that way, then you've already taken a long direction with regard to the criteria that you'll use for measurement. Next, we look at the appraisal process. In this appraisal process, we look at it from two aspects, or the three aspects. But the first one, when you are setting your appraisal, we need to start by communicating the performance standards. What is it that we want you to attain? In each of those, in your appraisal format or the appraisals indicators, depending on what are you rating against, but there has to be clear on each one of those indicators. Let it be clear, let it be discussed, let it be understood between the person being appraised and the person who is appraising. Then we have measuring of those standards. Then we have comparing. So when you are setting that, then we are identifying the performance goals, establishing the performance criteria. Then when we measure, we are determining when it will be measured, by which tool are we going to measure that, and what are the responsibilities of that process. Then we'll also have to compare the standards. So after measuring, we compare and say, good, or you've gotten excellent, or you are poor. Then we compare with what is acceptable. And what is it that made you not to achieve the optimal performance levels? That's under the comparison. So once you do that comparison and you give that, when you're doing final, the score, maybe I'm putting the score, that's when now you do it. You discuss the results and say, as per these, then this performance is either good or bad. And you give the recommendations on what needs to be done. And that's where now the corrective standards have to be done. So you're looking at discussing the results. That means you're appraising the results as whether they have met, exceeded the expectations, met the expectations, approaching below and all that. But then you're looking at what is it that needs to be done. Now that's where you conduct the appraisal interview, where from that conversation, then depending on how the achievement has been, it informs on the subsequent targets that will be set for that kind of employee or for that kind of staff. So from that discussion, then we set again, then you go back and communicate. You know, when you are setting again, that's the aspect of communication, where you're saying now, moving forward, this is how we are going to measure this. This is how these are the targets. This is how you are going to communicate. This is how you're going to write your reports. This is the timeline for each of these activities. This is how you need to conduct yourself. This is how you'll be responding. Because the response has, maybe you've identified from the appraisal that in one of the feedback you got is that the employee has been negligent. So then moving forward, how do you deal with negligence? Then you put the key action points and also look at when are you going to review that to ensure that you now put the staff on course to get to the right performance levels. So as we do that, then there is this other aspect I've introduced, that when you're doing the performance planning, in determining, examining that, so doing the performance appraisal process, then you are looking at what problems are we likely to experience? What problems do employees experience in the course of their work? Okay, and that requires taking corrective action that is continuous. Then we look at the support that needs to be done, whether there'll be coaching. If you'll constantly monitor this person, we normally have these performance improvement plans. And the performance improvement plans originate from where? The appraisal process. So when you're coming up with the PIP, that means the PIP will run alongside this appraisal, so that you are now trying to monitor and coach and ensure that this person achieves the performance levels that are acceptable. Because if they have been achieving the unacceptable levels, then you want to move them to acceptable levels. And that's where now the PIP will come in. So it will come in to elevate this person, to raise the person from that level. And that's where now mentorship and coaching becomes very, very critical. That you need to have now that person that will work with this person to just guide them, to pull them in the right direction for them to improve in their performance. So that's, in summary, what this appraisal is all about. So in anything that we do, anything that we are doing, if you look at the case of those who are doing the appraisals now, if you're doing them quarterly, for example, then you've already assessed, you've already measured the levels of performance for Q1. So you've already come up with what? The corrective standards. Or if you're looking forward to conduct those interviews, then you'll be looking at it and moving forward, what actions do you think will be appropriate for you? What actions will be appropriate for the staff? What actions will be appropriate for the department? Having considered the performance levels that have been attained. Next is now, who does the appraising? Who does the appraising? Especially when people say that the immediate supervisor is biased or is against the employee. Who does that? So it's a fact that the aspect of people complaining about biasness will never end. And therefore, the question will be, then do we get another person to appraise you? That will not be the solution. The solution lies in the appraiser and appraisee from the onset establishing the standards that are acceptable. 2, as an appraiser, you also need to exhibit high levels of justice, high levels of objectivity. But at the moment you exhibit levels of subjectivity, that's when you'll hear people saying that that appraisal, I don't think it's objective enough. That appraisal is biased. That appraisal will not take place, because if you look at it, you cannot every time be looking for somebody else to come in and support you for appraisal. Neither can we be having appraisals as if we are handling disciplinary meetings. Let appraisals be forums where we air our opinions, we discuss, we look at them as areas of improvement so that we don't take offense, but we look at constructive feedback between ourselves. Generally, the supervisor or the reporting manager is the best person to evaluate the subordinate's performance, and therefore it is their responsibility to ensure that they do that. Though other quarters argue that supervisor's rating is not always advisable if it's only one person giving the verdict, and that verdict is taken as final. Let me see, there is a chat here. Please switch off your video. Yes, okay. All right. So that's with regard to who does the appraising. And I know most of us have so many questions when it comes to, and maybe you've been accused, you've accused somebody of being biased, or you've accused somebody of not doing the right thing. But I also want to hear from one of us, or each one of us, then how have we circumvented this mindset, this stereotype that you are biased? Have you ever found yourself in a situation where people have regarded you as biased, or have you regarded somebody as biased? And what sort of remedy did they take, or what sort of remedy do you take to improve on that? Maybe is it an aspect of, did you start laying down the clear criteria on how the pensionment should be done and the kind of expectations to each employee? Has that improved anything? Has it changed anything? Has it changed the perception or not? That's open to anybody to share with us on that. Because I know this is something that we face. How have we dealt with it? How did you deal with these accusations if you've been supervising and people have labeled you as biased? And how did you take that?
Yes, James.
Yes.
Personally, I have a question also in regard to who should do the appraisal.
Yes.
Okay. Like in a case, we are like apparently in a case whereby there was an employee actually who was given a compulsory leave.
Yes.
Depending on the performance.
Compulsory leave.
Yes.
Yes.
And then now, in terms of now, he was given that room so that his performance can be reviewed and then the decision can be made. But now, upon now resuming back, actually it was decided that being that we are in the same process, being that we are in the same process of the appraisal, it should be taken to the appraisal process. But now in this case, his line manager refused to say he will be biased in terms of the appraisal, because apparently he gave him because of the performance. Now he cannot appraise him, he cannot appraise him because at a given time he'll be biased, or even if he will not be biased, the employee will see him like he's biased. In that case, who should do that appraisal that way? Because it's still now pending.
Interesting. In fact, there was a similar one, a similar case of like yours. That was in December, and the question was, now that somebody has been on in fact, that one the people had been on unpaid leave, and they are being asked now, if you do the appraisal, then are we to what are we appraising you on? Because now a period of like 3 months you've not been working, but here we are to look at the appraisal. Anyway, now on your case, on that case of because you talked about compulsory leave, I'm assuming compulsory leave for a period of time. In my view, I think the staff that is to be appraised and also the person who is supposed to appraise, there has to be a session so that first you will say, okay, you've been on a compulsory leave, and that means within that period of time, you did not do what? You are not productive, you are not working. And therefore, then when we are appraising you, then we'll appraise you not as any other employee who was working 100%, but there was some distraction within a period of time. And that has to be noted on the appraisal form. It is like when you rate me on a particular concept and maybe I was to achieve 50%, but I've only achieved 20%. Then we need to say, if I was to achieve 50%, if I'm working completely at work or fully at work, I will have achieved 50%. But now I've only achieved 20% because I had some period where I was not working. So then the explanation should be on the appraisal. Then we need to agree that we'll not appraise you on like any other person, but also we'll have that caveat where we'll say that this staff was actually on compulsory leave for this period of time. So whenever you score me, then that period of time, we actually will put you as a special consideration with regard to when we are giving any other analysis and saying that people who perform below power, this and that and that. But there has to be that caveat, there has to be that explanation, and that explanation is what can inform any action. So that if I'm just, I know the fear that staff was having is they will be appraised and the document will just read like any other employee who was working within a period of. So there has to be that noting that this person was on compulsory leave. Now, the question is, when this person was on compulsory leave, was it a disciplinary case or not a disciplinary case? Because now that also complicates this compulsory leave and also the appraisal part. Was it a disciplinary issue? Because if it's a disciplinary, then ultimately we can say then we attribute the poor performance to a disciplinary case, which was done within that period of time. Now that will bring in now the other aspect of the magnitude within which that compulsory leave was initiated. All right. Caleb?
Yes, a disciplinary thing, huh?
Yes.
A disciplinary action, and that's why he was sent away actually for that.
Yes.
So that he can also give the room and all that for maybe his actions can be reviewed.
Yes, yes.
Now, you see now he came back, yes, but no, his line manager now refused at all. Now, being that we are even in this process, yes, he has been away for it was being that he has been away for almost a month. Now I cannot do it. I cannot appraise him, depending that he still has even on disciplinary things. So I cannot even appraise him. But now here we are in the same process. Now, should we continue with the same process? And we should continue with the same process. Who should appraise him? Because already his line manager
has declined. But I know, you know, that line manager is just running away from responsibility, because even I'm sure with regard to that going on compulsory leave, it must have originated from the line manager's agreement, isn't it?
Yes, that's true.
Or recommendation. So there is no way you can run away from your responsibility. That becomes your baggage. So you have to hold it and complete it at the end. So when this person has resumed work, is that process complete? Has the investigations been done and the verdict determined?
Yes, the thing was done. And now even the part of the recommendation from the disciplinary committee was for him to be taken through the appraisal, so that the committee also be able to sustain whatever the line manager had put across. Yes. But now coming up with that decision, you see now the line manager refused to at all. Now that is the point where we are. But now I'm trying to look at this. Now, because now he has declined completely, and even if now we give him the room for the appraisal, right? At the end of the day, I know it will not be, as far as you're saying, you can do it maybe at even 20% or 50%. But you see, at the end of the day, it will be completely biased.
Yeah, because of the earlier recommendation.
Because of the earlier recommendation. But now, still the committee still holds like that will need to be done. But now we are wondering now, if the line manager has declined to do this, how do you work?
Okay, Caroline O'Dandy, you can respond to that.
Yeah, good morning. I was listening to what Brother Caleb is talking about.
Yes.
We have to agree that appraisal lies on the head of somebody.
Yes.
So if the line manager refuses, that is his responsibility. That's why you are a supervisor. You must bring down your ego. You must bring down your personal differences. You must and work for the greater good of the organization. We experienced a case in our organization sometime, but we had to, as HR and also as we realized that the employees had both employee and supervisor had some personal differences, but also had some history of a lot of arguments. So the line manager, in this case, must bite the bullet and decide, out of these four walls of this office, we still have a life. My role, the reason why I'm a supervisor, one of the key roles there is that I also supervise, I appraise, I motivate, I'm a problem solver. That's when you are that supervisor. So he must take up that sleeve and say, I want to solve this problem. And if he needs to step a bit down a little and listen more and try and get off any differences and then appraise this stuff. When you do that, then another third person or you now bring also another third person to be able to give an opinion or give an unbiased results. Then from there, you move to the next level and find a way of helping this staff and also helping the line manager. But I think I stand with the point that the line manager should do his or her part and let the organization move. The organization is bigger than your personal or the level differences that they may have with the staff. It will affect the group performance, and it will also affect the individual performance of each and every one of them in that. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you for that input. I think your sentiments are echoed by Mary. Mary says, HR will play a role of reconciliation. Then there's she also says that the line manager should also undergo disciplinary action for refusing to perform their duty, and also during the performance appraisal, a third person should be present to oversee, so that the line manager remains focused and not biased. So you can see where the buck is stopping at. You know, once when you've been entitled or entrusted with that responsibility of a line manager, you are leading that team. So there's no way you can start behaving as if there are some members that you want to dislodge from your team. Your main role should be, how do you enhance synergy? So you may have, of course, those people that are extreme, those ones that are not meeting your expectations. You may even have people that you differ. But remember that you are still the leader. You are leading that team. And what is expected from a leader is to ensure that you achieve harmony. So that backstops still with the line manager. So that line manager has to take responsibility. And if there be need for reconciliation, but that reconciliation should not happen at, we will not have a meeting whereby like the HR has to come in for the line manager to do the appraisal actually. But the line manager needs to be told that this is your responsibility. I remember in one of the organizations I worked for, we were dealing with some external consultants, trainers, and some of them could not come to class, or they could not come and lecture on time. So I remember our boss once telling us that if you're a head of department and you are not able to align your flock, then you better resign and let's get somebody else to do it, to ensure that they manage that. And he said that he doesn't want to hear anytime we are complaining about John, complaining about Ken for not doing their work. But he told us, make sure it is your responsibility, and that's why you have that position. Your position is to ensure that you make or you align your people, you align their tasks, you align their behavior towards the achievement of your departmental goals. And I think that's the same spirit that we ought to have, knowing that whenever you are in a position of responsibility, you just know that it is a weighty responsibility which you must carry. You are no longer that employee. You know, usually when you change, you know, I usually tell people, we need to acknowledge that we are no longer the staff. Once you assume a role of the manager or a role of the supervisor, then your responsibility changes, and even your approach, the way you are going to handle things will be different. Because this is the time now you have to be very decisive. You need to be resolving conflicts. You need to be coaching people. That means you need to have a general view of the people that you're working with. Anyway, that would be my take. I can see comments here. The line manager needs to undergo supervisory skills training. That's from Pat. Lack of leadership builds resentment. The appraisee sounded a valid alarm. Okay, thank you. I think that's also very, very appropriate. Keegan, Emmy Kiget says, what should the employee do if the supervisor is truly biased and he can't trust? Can a countersigning person come in? That's a question from Emmy Kiget. What should an employee do if the supervisor is truly biased and he can't trust? Can a countersigning person come in? Then HR should play the role of reconciliation. I think that has been said. Then, yeah, we need this person should undergo training. And I believe that training should go hand in hand with learning, so that you don't train and you don't learn. we can change the line manager mentality of performance appraisal from fault finding process to staff growth and development. Thank you, Rosalind. Thank you, Rosalind, for that. So that, you know, there's always that, we can only sit down and say, moving forward, you may have differences with me. And there's a time as a leader, I'll open up and say, okay, I'm ready for any, but we want to start on a clean slate. We want to start on a fresh slate moving forward. So what do we need to do so that you become my buddy, so that you become my team member without having to feel that there'll be cases of biasness. The appraisal part should be clearly indicated in the manager's JD and be part of the KPI. I think that's a comment from Professional 1122. We would like to know your name. Okay, so thank you very much. Caleb, I think that gives you some direction.
Yes, thank you James, for that guidelines.
Yes.
I appreciate so much.
Thank you very much. Right, so next.
Can I ask something?
Yes, go ahead. That is who?
This is Lillian.
Yes, Lillian.
In this case, a director, an employee, a manager reports to a director, but the director would actually not accept to appraise this manager. What should be done in such a scenario?
There's a director, then we have the manager, but the director does not or refuses to appraise the manager.
Yes.
Is that the case?
Not call it a refusal, not to go bad, but the person looks like he's actually probably one, he doesn't understand the process. And two, he probably is not confident enough that he is up to the task.
So there's the feeling of incompetency with regards to the process.
Yes, and this probably happens a lot with the family-owned business, which are not really corporate. And
Yes.
People on top there might not have so much experience in corporate world.
I think, yeah, that one I agree with you. In fact, such a case I've experienced it before from one of my clients who actually brought a report that showed the appraisal had been done, but even the kind of comments that came from that report from the boss. Because they were just mentioning some of the, we have these, comments on appraisal. They should not be seen as if they are emotional. Then they should not be seen as if they are these trivial comments. And that's what I saw from that appraisal. So, well, I get your point, where you find the directors, most directors who have not gone through the process of managing people, you find that they find it so difficult even to just rate people or to actually understand what they're supposed to do. And that means from the onset, this director never agreed with the manager from what they are going to be appraised on. So maybe the document was just signed because it has to be signed as a formality. But then when it comes to appraisal, the director has no clue, or he has not been even monitoring what the manager has been doing. So in that case, then they feel that they're not well placed to appraise. It's like, sometimes you have nothing to say about somebody, and here you are supposed to appraise them. Then you ask yourself, so what will I be commenting about this person? Yet it looks like I'm not supervising them. Maybe what I've been receiving was information from one side of the person. So I think, and this is a question that most CEOs have been facing, is do they also undergo training on appraising? And I think that's a recommendation that some CEOs lack that management when it comes to dealing with people. So let me see, I can see some comments coming in. To avoid the conflict at the end of the appraisal period, set agreed upon targets on planning. That's from Pat. think there was also a comment from, let me see. HR to guide supervisors on how to handle performance appraisals, prepare them to be able to handle them effectively. It starts with effective performance appraisal, effective performance systems, correct? How do top management take performance appraisal exercise as an important tool, assessing performance and improving? Yes. Good. To avoid conflict, I think that to directly set to the performance stage, performance contracting stage, and annual appraisal process. I think all these comments point at one, when you are a line manager, be it you are the director, be it you are at the middle level, you have a role to play. Your role is that you must, first of all, you must understand the performance appraisal process. You must understand your responsibility. Remember, we talked about who does the appraising, and we said the responsibility. You need to know that you have a responsibility of monitoring performance, and therefore, ultimately, you have to account for that. At the end of it, you need to say that my staff has been able to perform to this level. So we need to have, and I think most companies lately, they have been training people on HR for non-HR. Now, HR for non-HR training does not necessarily mean that I'm going to train your IT line manager or your finance line manager on all the HR processes. But we pinpoint, what we've been doing is we pinpoint a few areas that are critical. For example, you are looking at recruitment. The line manager will be there when you are recruiting. So what is it that they need to be looking for in recruitment? Training. How do they establish the training needs? Then when you come to appraisal, what is the role? When you look at things to do with employee relations, grievances, when you're looking at rewards, all that. So you just look at, you tailor-make some of the key areas under HR so that the people are trained on. And it's very important, especially if you're doing it for the organization, then you have more of an in-house training so that you tailor-make that training to your specific context. And therefore, even your line managers, be it in marketing or production, they're able to have a clear view of what is it that I need to look for, so that also they don't look at HR as a performance management being a very broad concept, and therefore, again, trying to internalize at the organization level becomes tricky. So that training is very critical, but I understand the comment that is please share the sample appraisal form. Okay. Is it okay to appraise someone and not give them room for audience to the person being appraised? That's not acceptable. When you appraise, let us give room for people to respond or to comment about what the appraisal process has been like, so that it's not perceived as one way. Okay, so Lillian, so that is that's my take on that. So that director, I think the director feels deficient in carrying out the responsibility, so they need to be trained. But as you've said, family-owned businesses, usually most of those family-owned, they lack a lot about these skills. Though I've seen, there's a case of one family-owned business, and when he was seeking consulting, because he had explained those areas of having problems with some staff. But what we advised him is that he needs now to delegate that responsibility to somebody who understands. And we said even you can make use of consultants in the meantime as they get you to understand what you need to do. And he did that. And with time, the consultant was training him. At the same time, also, the consultant was doing the appraisal for this senior staff, who ultimately will have reported to the CEO. But after some time, I think after 2 years, then the CEO also understood exactly what the director understood what exactly they were supposed to focus on when appraising. And every time there was that consultation which enabled them to handle the situations as they arose.
Sorry. Hello.
Yes, yes.
Please allow me to ask one more quick one.
Yes.
In terms of, okay, you've said that, you've mentioned that probably they feel these people might not have the required experience to do this. But as a person who understands that there is a gap that needs to be covered, how would you suggest that we approach, or the person approaches, the issue of talking to this person to probably get trained in that area, so that probably they are in future able to appraise them?
Yeah, normally what I've seen, now in that case, I don't know how specific that case is, but the person that can talk to that, when the appraisal has failed, when the director is not able to appraise and wants to delegate that role to another person, of course, they're lucky to delegate it to, let's say, another senior manager, or assuming there's a HR manager, they may delegate that role to them. So that's the point, that now the HR or the person that has been delegated that role to also just inform the director that, you know, this, when it comes to appraisals, when we appraise this, the appraisal process will not be perceived as objective because this person does not directly report to me, rather they report to you. So it's important that you understand this appraisal process, and even you're supposed to have started the process of setting the objectives, the goals from the onset. So from that process then, and also refer to the director with regard to what is the policy with regard to running the appraisal process, so that they understand, they can be trained on it, they can go through the appraisal process, they can actually, because I'm assuming the director also has the board of directors that appraise them. Unless if it's a situation where the director is overall and the director has never been appraised. But usually in situations where the board also appraises the director, you find that the director also tends to understand what is supposed to be part of the process, to ensure that if the board is appraising me and I'm the director, then the same approach that the chairman of the board is using, I can also be able to understand from there, from the conversation we'll have with the board and all that, then I cascade that at also that other level. So that also, I know directors they don't want to be seen to be being trained on low level training, but now that's where leaders emerge. Leaders understand everything from the lower level to the topmost level. But if you get a situation where now the director tends to put themselves at that particular point, that's now a panacea for failure. But anyway, I know there could be different opinions to that, but what we advise them is it is important for them to go for that training, so that, because they're the ultimate line managers on that, they should actually be doing that role. That's the advice that they should be given. And in the absence of a board of directors, then the senior manager who will be doing on behalf of that should emphasize the need for the director that this is their responsibility, and therefore it cannot be done by somebody else, unless now they want to delegate even the reporting line to that other senior manager. That would be my take. But I will advise that the directors have to undergo the appraisal also. They need to know the appraisal process, because how will they then comment on the appraisal of other people, other departments, if they themselves have no clue on what appraisal means? Thank you. Ruth says, can I ask, is there such a thing like performance appraisal policy? Ruth is asking whether there's a performance appraisal policy. I think appraisal policy is actually inside the performance management policy. Within your policy, then you talk about when the appraisals will be done, how they should be done, and what sort of activities will be part of that appraisal process. For performance appraisal done quarterly, maybe how different instructors should they be, so that the team does not feel like it's too repetitive, too predictive? Okay, Wangeshi says, if it's quarterly, how do you ensure that it's not too repetitive nor too predictable? I think that boils down to how you've cascaded your your expectations. You have different strategic objectives. So there are those ones that have to be achieved within every quarter. So every quarter you have a percentage so that ultimately it adds up to the final score. So you can have that kind of approach where you've actually given it a particular score, but ultimately it builds up to the main one. But now this aspect of being repetitive or too predictable, I think that will it goes down to you as the person doing the assessment. There are some activities that are repetitive anyway, but now it depends with how you measuring those repetitive activities within the quarter and subsequently up to the end. But there are things that you cannot assume that they'll only happen once. But it's all about how you've created your monitoring tool to ensure that you capture that within a period of time. But then let me see another comment. Question and answer. Let me see, there's a question here from, okay, Phoebe says appraisal form. Phoebe, maybe we can take that on the sides. We can look at, actually that one we do it specific to the organization. We have the general ones, also depending on the industry. Different industries have different appraisal tools. And nowadays we've gone even to have the integrated performance management system, which is online. We just have the softwares, then we populate that and we integrate. But generally we have these other ones that can also be customized to your needs, and depending also on the scope of the portfolio of the business. Okay, let me see if there's any chat. I think that is it. Any other question or clarification? But thank you for those comments. Thank you for those observations. I think they are spicing up our conversation, and it's opening up most of our thinking with regard to handling these elephants that we call appraisal. Because I know some of us, at times we are the culprits of the same, where we perceive or we get perceived as exhibiting this kind of characteristics. But nonetheless, life is that way, work has to go on, and we must always swallow the pride and execute our roles as expected. Okay, so I'd mentioned about this, who does the appraisal. And typically, our appraisals revolve around this. We have the immediate supervisor, we have peers, we have subordinates, self-rating, rating committees. That in itself gives us 360-degree feedback. But in the same format, if you look at this 360-degree feedback, that's also where we have the subordinate and the self-rating. And mostly our ratings are informed by that. Most of our appraisals, rarely do you find organizations that are exhibiting the 360 feedback, unless if it's done as a balanced scorecard. But in most cases, we tend to limit ourselves to subordinate and also the self-rating. Then we do the average, which is still a bit traditional, because every time, of course, somebody will rate themselves at 10, even if they know they have performed at 4. So the honors at that moment is for you, the line supervisor, to convince them that they are not the 10% score, they are actually the 4% score, which at times breeds a lot of resentment within the team. So what do we measure? Normally, we measure what we call objective and subjective methods. So we have the objective and subjective methods. So the objective methods may look at the performance levels, the results, the sales, production, whereas the subjective ones will be looking at comparisons or comparative to something. That's where we do the essay description of what somebody has done, how they've exhibited a particular behavior and all that. Then also it could be ranking where you're ranking people based on a particular indicator. It could be forced distribution, which normally has its own criticism on equal measure and also the liking, where people claim that if you want to ensure that people score by observing the normal curve, that means that we are not being objective. So it also has its own criticisms, as well as people who like having the normal distribution curve and say that you must have a particular percentage on this, particular percentage in the middle, and also a percentage on the lower level. So as we do that, whenever we are doing the measurements, whether objective or subjective, then our purpose is we are looking at the traits, we are also looking at behavior, and we look at the results. So all these three is what shapes how we are going to do our appraisal. We'll be looking at these three to inform what sort of recommendations we'll have at the end with regard to this, to the process. We'll be looking at the results. What results have they achieved? Because at times you'll have the results score being very high, but when it comes to behavior-based analysis on that aspect, then we say that, however, this person is not very, very cooperative. However, this person does not exhibit good resilience, good customer skills, but they're able to perform. So this variation is what brings in also the diversity with the people that we deal with. Others could be very, they have very good traits. They are very jovial. They are very, for them, it's people, they are these people who impress very much. But then when you look at the results, they are poor performers. Now that in itself, so when you are doing the appraisal, you have to know that you have to balance between all this so that you understand there are some traits that may not necessarily dictate the results. There are some traits that may not necessarily dictate or also link to behavior characteristic of a person. So that we must be alive to that fact as professionals. So those are the methods that we need to use. And in summary, they are quite, like if you look at this diagram, all these are methods of what? Of appraisal. But then, depending on how your organization is set up, you may have combined, you find that you've synchronized a number of them into one appraisal system. Others may be having them or maybe using them independently. But in most cases, you find that you may have a rating scale in the same appraisal. You may have an essay description of the behavior or rating of the person. You may have critical incidents. You may have a checklist, but I think checklists have been done away with. They're mainly used as maybe for continuous, mainly for continuous performance management, but not essentially in the appraisal, because you use a checklist now to show that this person has been able to comply with the necessary job requirement. They have the necessary tools. They've been able to work within the same, or they have the necessary tools to do that, and also the resources. So this is what we'll be discussing subsequently from today. I'll mention a few of them. The next week we'll continue with the rest and conclude with other aspects of appraisals. So allow me to introduce one of the methods, which is the critical incident. And this critical incident method, I know it may look abstract, it may look a bit far-fetched, but every time we work, every time we deal with employees, every time we deal with our colleagues, there are certain incidents, there are certain occurrences at work, which we normally reflect on, which we normally point at, even when we are doing the appraisal. And normally they're called critical because they reflect on your work. They reflect on the output that you do. So in that case, then we need to keep a record of what are these incidents where you either, sorry, whether you either cooperated, or you either made a mistake, you committed an error, how did you go about it? So all that will be the critical incidents within your work. or you missed out on communicating to a staff, or you dealt with a particular problem in a particular manner. You either, sometimes even the extreme cases whereby you engaged in verbal disagreements and all that. So those are incidents that can arise. And in most cases, they need to be handled at the disciplinary level. If they're extreme, then we have these others where we just note and say that on this particular day, the clients came and it was only James who was around, and he was able to sort them out. He was able to deal with their problem without having to call and make or bring about the delay to the clients. So those are the critical incidents, and also what you exhibit. So by critical incidents, it doesn't mean that it's only the negative aspects, but you're also looking at what are those things that you did within the period of work that we can always point out and say that was done in the right way. So the rater will now keep a record of those incidents involving both positive and negative employee behaviors. So the same record will now be used. They'll be put together. Now, when you're doing the appraisal, those are the points that you'll be referring to. Because I know in most cases, most of us, we don't keep any records. So when it comes to appraisal, we are not able to appraise somebody even positively or negatively, because we only remember one incident which happened last week, or we only remember one incident that happened 2 days ago. So it limits our judgment when it comes to evaluation. But whenever you keep this, it actually makes your work easier for reference purposes, though we should not keep them for the sake of the appraisal only, but let them be points of reference. But it's like we're not building evidence to cross somebody, or you're not building evidence for the case, but you're using those as reference points when you are appraising somebody on a particular indicator which borders on any of those incidences. So that's one thing that I would like to emphasize, that let's not use it as a weapon to intimidate or a weapon to witch hunt and cause a lot of fear and a lot of anticipation, anxiety in people. Because the period of appraisal, by the way, that one, many people do not anticipate it, because the way we've created it, the way we've made it to appear, it's like it's a time of judgment. It's like going to Hague, and here you find somebody you've been working with, you've been laughing with, and suddenly now it's like they're using that evidence to crucify you. So the significance of that is that it helps you as a supervisor and a subordinate to be looking at that process throughout. Because every time you're looking at those incidents and you're dealing with them and you're acting on them, that gives it a continuity, so that you avoid cases whereby it appears like it's a one-day affair or it's an event that happens only once. Now, the disadvantage is that it requires you to keep track. That means every time you need to keep track of those incidents. At times, and this is what I said, sometimes it's very subjective on the kind of incidents that you record. Because what may appear to be critical in my view may be, according to you, you say that's a very trivial component, and therefore it didn't need, there was no need for you to have recorded it. It doesn't meet the requirement of being a critical incident. Okay, then also another disadvantage that can come with it is when employees perceive the manager as keeping a book on him or them. Because according to that, you will feel that now that every time the manager is reporting this, or the line manager is keeping track of me, then that means I'm actually in their radar. People talk about the radar, that every time you are being monitored. That should not be the case. Let it be a situation whereby you're saying, when you do something, and let us always look at it from the positive perspective, and let's encourage people to say that we'll not just record it's all about the positive and the negative. And also when we record them, then we are dealing with them. Okay. Now somebody will ask, must I have a documented evidence? Like just to develop it for that person. It may not, even these incidents are not necessarily having to be documented like chronologically, but it's all about even the instances that you have a meeting and you say, further to this meeting, you can even use an email, just writing an email to emphasize on something that you've had or a discussion you've had. Also, those emails will act as, they will actually enable you when you are discussing the appraisals to be able to refer to them and say, whatever you did was fantastic. Maybe in one day that this person made or dealt with the client and the client appreciated. Always just note that as part of what? The critical incidents. Nowadays, people will send a WhatsApp or they will share and say, I appreciate what Patrick did. I'm elated by what Patrick did. I was able to be assisted within the shortest time possible. Now, that's a critical incident. So it's all about how we communicate it so that even our line managers understand that we are not using these to punish anyone, but it should be used as evidence or reference point whenever we want to deal with an issue and to see whether actually that if for example we acknowledged you in the first quarter of the year, are you still actually appreciating you in the second quarter? Are you exhibiting same or more character traits or behavior, or did you do just one and you forgot about it in January? If you've made a mistake in the first quarter, also in the first month, if you look at the incidents, have they declined? Now that's what enables you to have a very, very objective, it may be tedious, but it enables you to have a very objective appraisal process without having to argue for two hours, 3 hours, just appraising one person. So that is what I would like to mention, ladies and gentlemen. Good. So to that point, I think I would love to end there for today so that we can proceed from there next week from the graphical method. Then we'll delve more. In fact, in the next week, we'll delve more on what makes appraisals to fail. You as an individual, what is it that you need to work on to make sure that we execute these appraisals in the most effective way? Me as an appraisee, also what I need to put in place so that we work in harmony and realize the objectives of this appraisal. So I welcome final questions on this before we close. I can see our time is already up for today. So any question, any observation before we close? But I want to say thank you very much for the comments. I see they have been coming fast and furious. For those who have raised the concerns, and I believe we are on the right track from the sharing that has occurred today in this setting. So asante sana. If there any question, any comment, any see somebody one new message. Okay, Ali, thank you very much. Looking forward for next session. Grace, thank you very much. Looking forward for a more insightful one next week. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Patrick. Phoebe. Yeah, Phoebe says we should be doing this on a day-to-day basis. Thank you very much. That's very, very critical. Right. Alice, Janet, Lillian. Thank you very much. Emmy. And Rosalind, thank you very much.